All right, so we're going to go to the addenda for Montgomery County jurisdictional on GCAAR. So you've got your information on the top, master plan disclosures. And this is just a disclosure for the buyer to see, oh, okay, I can examine prior to signing this contract the applicable county master plan. The buyer understands that to stay informed, buyer should consult the planning board. This is for Montgomery County or City of Rockville. So just be sure that the buyer is signing the right one. They don't sign both. And this is just I've disclosed this to you, okay? So they're not agreeing to anything. It's just been disclosed to them. Private water supply system, that's what we would call a septic, okay? Property is served, yes, no. If it is, there'll be a separate septic addendum signed. Are there tenants in the property? Number 3. 4, is the buyer a first-time home buyer or not? Buyer is not a first-time Maryland home buyer. Buyer is a first-time Maryland home buyer. So just remember in GCAAR, there are these, there's a jurisdictional addendum where you sign things off initially, and then you have another addendum to fill out for it, okay? Maryland lead poisoning prevention program, just letting them know about that. The non-resident seller, letting them know about that. Protection of Homeowners and Foreclosure Act. All these things we dealt with in earlier jurisdictions, earlier forms with MAR, but just letting you know that, hey, these are notices the buyer needs to be aware of for Montgomery County. Homestead property tax credit, notices to buyer, number 10. They have a right to buy their own title insurance. Buyer has a right to receive disclosure disclaimer statement. Advise if all or portion of property being purchased as wetlands, what they need to do there. Protected by Real Estate Guarantee Fund. The Chesapeake Atlantic Coastal Bay Area, critical areas. We talked about that in the MAR documents. And then 11, release of deposit, how that has to happen. And the deposit hereby authorizes and directs as specific to hold the deposit until the parties have executed and accepted this contract. All right. That is all in the Montgomery County jurisdictional addendum. There's a one just like this for DC. So when you would use that GCAAR contract, you'd have a DC jurisdictional addendum, which would be much like this, but with DC specific items. Then there's 2 addendum of clauses for GCAAR in Montgomery County. All right. This one is seller's credit to buyers. Yes, I'm going to do a credit. Okay. In addition to any other amount, the sellers agreed to pay under the provisions of this settlement with the sum of X. So this is where you put it for GCAAR properties. Inspection contingency. All right. It's contingent until 6 p.m. And then underneath 2, you have the way that it's going to be negotiated. Make sure you block out the way that you think about in VAR, where you've got a week and you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This one, it is set up when you go back and forth, okay? The right will terminate at the deadlines unless by the deadline, buyer delivers to seller a copy of the report together with a home inspection notice, listing home inspection conditions or items the buyer requires the seller to repair and or stipulating a dollar credit as allowed by the lender to be paid at settlement, all right? Upon such delivery, 2B, if selected below, shall no longer be an option. So if you deliver the home inspection with a list of things I want done, I can't do 2B. You can do A, B, or both. You can check both of them, but then you got to decide which one you want to do. If you cancel, you can't do A. If you submit the report, you can't do B. That's what it says here. Now, if the seller elects not to perform in accordance with the home inspection notice or makes another offer, seller will be delivered notice to buyer of any such decision within 3 days after. So it's October 15th. And I have given you the home inspection notice and the home inspection, the 15th. The seller already has 3 days to get back to me. Okay. And within 3 days after delivery of a notice from one party, the other party may, now it's going back and forth. Deliver notice accepting the terms. Deliver notice continuing negotiations. Deliver notice the contract can become void. It can go back and forth till someone says uncle. Okay. And so there is no, the only way there's a final decision, because in Northern Virginia, the buyer gets the final word. I'm in or I'm out. Here, the one that gets the final word is the one that delivers the void first. That's the final word. Any questions on A? Now, bold letters should be bigger. If you don't respond within 3 days after the last delivery, you have accepted the conditions of the last delivery, either party. Everybody got that? Silence is not golden, okay? Silence is a handcuff. So remember that. You don't respond, you've accepted what they've said. Okay?
Is that verbal or is that written?
Pardon?
Is that verbal acceptance or written?
Oh, deliver notice.
Okay.
So I give something to the seller.
Yeah.
They give something back to me. I give something back to them. They give something back to me and said, that's it, $1,000, that's all. We're only giving you $1,000. And on day 3 at midnight, I say nothing. I've accepted the $1,000.
$1,000, yeah.
Now I can't get out. I've accepted it because I didn't respond or I didn't void. All right. This is the additional as-is provisions. You know what that paragraph is. It's on this form, the addendum of clauses A. Rate on inspection contingency, it's on A. And then holding deposit check, licensee relationship disclosure, additional provisions. All of this is on clauses A. The power here is remembering where these things are, okay? Because you're going to call me, where is the thing for the thing? And sometimes I have to go look it up, okay? So then there's addendum B. Sale of buyer's property contingency with kickout. This is very much like the one in Virginia. Settlement of buyer's property contingency. Okay. Backup contract. Contingent on seller purchasing another home. Lead-based paint inspection contingency. Third-party approval. Brokerage fee paid by buyer. Master plan review for Montgomery County. Post-settlement air conditioning and swimming pool inspection. 1031 exchange. Appraisal contingency. This would be like a cash appraisal contingency. And that's it. So the key on these two forms is knowing what clauses are on which form. Okay. So we had ours in 4 pages at NVAR. They decided to spread it out in 2 different forms. So that's just the difference. Any questions on these? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. A and B. So I've had a home inspection and now I want to respond. That's the home inspection contingency notice and or addendum, affectionately known as the HICRA in all DMV jurisdictions. And now in Virginia, it's the ICRA. So what you have here is I'm responding, I'm giving you the repairs and credits that I want, and there you go. That's all this is. Pretty straightforward. Now, this last sentence here, the items enumerated from the above list shall be replaced, repaired, or otherwise rectified by licensed contractors, and a seller shall provide buyer with a receipt from said contractors for such work by settlement. So 2 things, licensed contractor and receipt for the work. And it's not written here, but the buyer really doesn't get a say except for what they've enumerated. I don't like the way that they repaired that. Is it repaired?
Oh, well.
Yeah. You know, because what if that's what we wanted, repaired, retested, and they want to see the receipt of the test results that are acceptable to the buyer. You see how that can get really enumerated and elongated?
Mm.
Oh, I had the HVAC fixed. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the HVAC was fixed. Here's the receipts. Move along. Yeah. I want to tell you, that is the way it is. All right. I'm just going to bring up one financing addendum in Maryland. I think generally it's the same way as it is in Virginia. First deed, second deed, financing contingency, alternate financing, same thing. Seller's option to void contract. Buyer shall deliver by 6 p.m. Now, in Virginia,
It's 9 o'clock, right?
yeah, well, let me back up. In the MAR, there is no automatic extension. I'm just pointing that out.
Oh, really?
You've got X amount of date, and it's got to be done by X amount of date. Okay. Here, it says, I just saw it. It was just there.
By,
Then it will continue. I just saw it.
by 6 p.m., right there, number 4.
Right.
Anthony, should that be 3 days or 7 days?
Just a second. Oh, here it is. Following the financing deadline, but until buyer delivers a conditional commitment to seller, the financing contingency will continue and seller may deliver notice to buyer declaring this contract void. That's what I was looking for. In Maryland, it's automatically an extension. Okay.
Oh.
So financing deadline comes, I haven't received anything, the financing contingency continues, and the seller may deliver a notice to buyer declaring the contract void. Okay. In Virginia, we don't declare it void. We say your deadline came, you've got 2 days to void. And if they don't void in 2 days, they have removed it by their silence, the seller's, the financing contingency in Virginia. Here, it continues until the seller delivers the notice to void. Okay.
Just to be clear, Anthony, in Virginia, if nothing happened by the deadline, the seller will give 2 days or however amount of days. And if the buyer doesn't respond, that means automatically they accept it. So you have to respond,
Yeah,
right?
let me just clarify. So in Virginia, if you're under the extension, automatic extension,
Yeah, auto extension, yeah.
the seller would send a notice saying you've got, I think it's 2 days to.
Okay.
So the seller has now given them notice. I want to see an acceptance letter. I want to see a commitment. And if the buyer can't get a commitment letter, they only have 2 days to void. And they would send a void with a rejection letter. If on the 3rd day they have not voided, they have removed the financing contingency in Virginia. In Virginia.
Maryland, it continues until they deliver.
But I don't give you a notice to void. I send you a notice. I'm sorry, I'm not sending you a notice for you having as a buyer the option to void or put up. I'm sending you a notice to void. It is now a void contract because you didn't deliver it to me. You can reinstate it if the buyer, hey, wait a minute, I've got it. Let's reinstate, but you need an addendum that reinstates the contract.
Okay. But the seller can't say, no, I don't want to restate it.
Yeah.
It's open.
No, you're done. We're back on the market. Write me
Okay.
another offer. You know, we'll
Yeah.
start from ground zero. Does everyone get this whole? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I understand. But I was just, is it 3 days or 7 days? The buyer shall deliver by 6 p.m. How many days after
It
gratification?
depends. I mean, buyer shall deliver. Oh, no, that would be, usually that's like 20 days, 14 days. Because this is not
Oh, right, to get that.
yeah,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah. This is like, I need approval.
Right.
Conditional commitment means we've gone through your application. We're giving you a commitment letter. This is not a lender letter, unless the lender tells you, hey, this is as good as a commitment letter. A lender letter that you apply with this contract and send over on the contract is just letting the seller know, I've talked with a lender, I have an application going in, I'm great, they're qualified up to X. And then the lender will say, depending on A, B, C, D, E. That's what goes with the contract. Then we got the, hey, you're clear to close notification, or you've been conditionally approved. Okay, great. That I send to them and we're good to go, and this has been fulfilled. But the seller can say, look, you had till the 15th, you haven't done it. I'm going to send you a notice. This is where an agent would say, hey, do you have that letter? My seller really wants it. We don't want a void. So you're kind of giving them warning by your phone calls and emails. We don't want a void. Can you get that in? And then if they don't, you void it and go back on the market. Okay, excuse me. All right, got it. Financing rejection. All right, you know that. Appraisal contingency. All right, contingency on finance, such specific, yeah. The contract is not contingent on the X date, and this is also where I put, I usually put 21 days, 3 weeks, because you never know how long it's going to take for the appraiser to get out there. So you want an appraisal, and then this is where ours has it as A, B, C, D. They got it rolled up in one sentence. If it's right on, if it's off, if the property doesn't, here's all the options with the appraisal. Again, pre-printed deadlines here. That's the big difference with Maryland. In the event that buyer delivers to seller buyer's appraisal notice by the appraisal deadline, the party shall have until 6 p.m. on the third day after delivery of the notice to negotiate a mutually acceptable new. We don't get to put in these dates. This is pre-printed in the contract. You could cross it out and put something, but it's in the contract. If at the end of the negotiation you can't get an agreement, buyer shall have the option to void the contract by delivering notice 6 p.m. on the third day following the end negotiation period. Again, a pre-printed deadline. Otherwise, this appraisal contingency shall be removed and the contract remain in full force. Okay. Lender required repairs. Again, make sure the seller understands this. Okay. Lender required, buyer will deliver notice to seller of lender's required repairs and request for seller to repair them. There's these deadlines again. Within 5 days after delivery, seller will deliver notice to buyer as to whether or not seller will make the repairs. Failure of seller to deliver notice to buyer within said time frame shall be deemed an election by seller to not make the repairs. So there, if the seller doesn't respond, he has said or she has said no. If they won't do it, then the buyer has 5 days to deliver notice that he's in or out. Okay. Addendum for seller to pay buyer broker compensation. It's kind of the same thing that we had with MAR, except it nails it down in the contract as an addendum. Seller agrees to pay buyer broker a broker's compensation of X. Okay. There's the notice we talked about. Any questions? None? Okay. All right, folks. That is the contract of the day. That's all, folks.
I can't wait to